Welcome back, everybody. Danny Page here on Running Remote Online. It's hard to believe that this day is almost over. We went live 10 and a half hours ago. Coming up, our final talk of the day before I get a chance to talk with Liam Martin as Liam and I close things out. Carlos Escutia from Grow Work Remote. Carlos, we just did a podcast last week. We recorded it last week. It'll be released later this year. And I think this is like the chief, but companies neglecting the backbone of their company, which is in many cases the backbone of their employees, right? I mean, the reality is, and what you're solving for, and what you're going to walk us through, is one of the biggest problems now, which is the compliance related to the physical well-being of workers, the ergonomics, they're not just their physical state, but their mental and emotional state. And that's exactly what Grow Work Remote is working on.
Absolutely. Pleasure to be here, Danny. Thank you very much for the invitation and for organizing this great event. I've been following it since early morning here in my local California time. So great stuff. Absolutely. I mean, to your point, really what we're solving, what we're working on is how do we help companies ensure that their remote employees are being taken care of, wherever it is they're working from. And we start with the workspace. So, I'd like to go over a few slides just to give you you and your audience an overview of the sort of problem that we're tackling and why this is important for companies to keep a front and center as they continue to move in that transition from co-located to remote, or companies that are already doing working remotely, that they need to pay more attention to this.
Right, absolutely. I'm going to let you take over. I'll step away. Everyone ask your questions. Like I want to ask the audience too, what does your ideal workspace look like, right? Like what do you need to kick up to the rest of your company to say, hey, Carlos, I'm going to hand this over to you. I'll be back running through the questions in about 20 minutes.
Absolutely. Appreciate it, Danny. Thank you very much. Okay, great, guys. So really quick, as I mentioned earlier, the purpose of this presentation is really just to go over kind of the problems that we're tackling, what we're seeing with this transition to remote work, how a lot of people, a lot of companies have been kind of not thinking really about it, and we're starting to see some issues now that we're helping our customers, take care of with a platform. So really quick about us, so about myself, I'm the founder and CEO of Grow Remote. Before this, I was the co-founder and former head of business and operations of Casa One, the largest furniture rental tech company in the U.S. And before this, I work in financial services. I was an investment banker. Spent a lot of hours behind a desk, so understand the pains of working out of an office for long hours, and kind of one of the reasons why we're also building this. And so, how do we get here, right? Gradually, then suddenly. We knew that things were moving in this direction of remote work, and all of a sudden, the global pandemic arrived in early 2020, and the largest work from home experiment started. Right, no longer a privilege for a few. I mean, less than 5% of the worker population, but a necessity for everyone. Right, and so in doing this, it's important to continue reminding yourselves that this is an emergency work from home and it hasn't been planned. So with all this trouble, with all these issues, we'll still have been able to manage and do this transition and be successful at it. So that's been a great achievement for this transition, right? So we can credit remote work for single-handedly saving the economy. What does this mean? Imagine if the pandemic had hit us, at a time where we did not have an internet, we did not have the collaboration tools that have enabled us to continue working with our teams in a distributed form. So we can really think about even the impact, the economic damage that has been done by the lockdowns. It could have been a lot worse if we had not been able to work remotely. So this is an important thing to think about. So what are we doing now, right? We need to adapt fast or die, right? The office as a place to do work has permanently changed in just 7 months. Already, the idea of commuting is absurd. Imagine, having to get on a train at 7 in the morning to go to a city downtown, to get in an elevator, and go to the 37th floor of a office building to sit down in cubicles already sounds absurd, right? The pandemic really accelerated a trend that was already here, as I mentioned. As I was building my previous company, we started recruiting employees outside of San Francisco Bay Area, in India, in other parts of the United States, and we noticed and we saw how efficient we were in terms of hiring and attracting top talent and helping us build our business. But at the same time, we knew that worked. And so we also started noticing that was happening around us with other companies being launched as remote first. So we knew that there was something there. COVID, what it's done really is accelerated, to the next 5 years to the last 7-8 months, right? And so we're here at this point. And so, the businesses are the benefits are clear for businesses, right? You have access to broader, more diverse talent pool in the U.S. You don't have to deal with the hassle of H-1B business anymore, which has been a struggle for a lot of technical talent that wanted to move to the U.S. and wanted to work for a top U.S. corporation, but had to deal with the hassle of it. So now it's no longer the case because of this remote enablement. Obviously, the lower costs are there. It's self-evident. You have a reduced real estate footprint. You save up anywhere between $10,000 to more than $25,000 in some cases per employee per year. And obviously, from a business standpoint, as you build your company, as you grow, you want to build that strategic resilience, right? We are currently facing a pandemic, but this may not be the last one. And the effects that we're suffering with climate change are being palpable anywhere. We in California are actually feeling this with the fires and that we've experienced this year. And so, having a distributed team allows us to the risk operationally as we grow and continue building our businesses. But there's some clear pushback, right? We've heard from the likes of Reed Hastings, Jamie Dimon, Tim Cook, no, we're going to go back to the office. Really, we don't like remote work. And that's fine. The reality is that large companies probably will not be the ones pushing for remote work, right? This will be probably the ones that will be asking their employees to go back as soon as possible. But it's important that we don't know when this is going to be possible. It's important to remind ourselves that we're still in the middle of a pandemic. Yes, there's great news that vaccines are in production, and that is great to hear. But it's going to take time to ramp up and get there so that we're able to go back and feel safe in a workspace. And JP Morgan experienced this just a few months ago when they're asked their traders to go back to the office, and all of a sudden they started seeing these outbreaks of COVID. So they had to send back everybody home. So that's just something that's going to continue happening, right? But offices will never go back to how they used to be. Nearly 7% of CEOs expect to downsize offices, according to KPMG. 74% of CFOs plan to permanently shift their employees to work remotely post-COVID-19, according to Gartner. 67% of companies expect work from home to be permanent or long-lasting, according to S&P Global Market Intelligence. And 72% of employees would like to work remotely at least 3 days a week, according to PwC. And obviously the other data point that 90% of employees want to work remotely at least one day a week, right? So the great majority want to work outside or have the flexibility to work outside of an office. So we changed our new challenges. Employee safety and wellness, physical and mental, will remain a top focus, right? And it turns out that the workspace has a lot to do with it. There was a recent survey by Leesman Index of 100,000 workers that found that work from home satisfaction was directly correlated to having a dedicated office and desk space, right? This on top of the additional stressors that we have and distractions that we have under the conditions that we're doing remote work today. That is, your kids are at home, being homeschooled, you have roommates, your significant other is working in another room, having same calls at the same time that you do, or you live in a small city apartment. Anyways, why do you live in a small city apartment? Why? Because you wanted to be close to the office, right? But you no longer need to do this. And we're actually starting to see the effects of people living in big cities, New York, San Francisco, to go purchase a home that has the room, the space, so that they can create a home office that meets their needs, right? So the conditions of where you work from are more important than ever to make remote work sustainable in the long term. So here's what we took for granted, though. Companies spend hundreds of hours and millions of dollars to ensure that the office space is a safe and comfortable environment. And all is gone when working remote, right? The approach of companies, and this is understanding and understandable for some of them that had to transition out of an emergency and make everything all of a sudden. But the approach of many companies is figure it out. Here's $500, buy a chair, buy a desk, right? If you're lucky, by the way, because the great majority of companies are actually not able to provide this sort of stipend to their employees to get equipment. And after 8 months of working from home, the data started coming. There are a couple of articles that came up in New York Times not too long ago that actually start talking about the number of injuries that people are getting into by working with suboptimal equipment or not having the right supervision, training or guidance ergonomically. And so this will continue to generate more problems in the short term, the longer more people work from home without the resources, the services that they require to do it safely and comfortably. And there's a lot more than just a chair and a desk. Ergonomics for a lot of people, especially younger people, it's not sexy. That's a reality. You hear ergonomics and it really doesn't resonate, but it is very important. And you need to understand what works for you. If you have a previous condition, a back pain, neck pain, whatever that might be, you need to understand what is the type of equipment that you need to use that can be tailored to your own unique needs, right? So it's not just about getting the nice, cute little, task chair that matches the decoration of your living room. It's about having the proper chair. It's about having the proper desk. It's about having the proper monitors and all the peripherals and the training that goes around that to ensure that you know how to use each thing, right? Also, you need to develop new habits. You no longer have the social cues that you had when you were in an office, right? So when it was lunchtime, right? For example, you would see your colleagues standing up and go out there because it's time to eat, to get lunch. When you're working from home, sometimes you don't have those cues, and it's not unheard of, and it happens to me a lot of time that you're working and you just forget to eat, right? So you have to remind yourself that, hey, we have to make time and schedule this. Hey, I need to get up. I need to take a walk. I need to move more, right? And so this is something you have to be thoughtful. You have to be proactive about it and train yourself for it. So what about for work from anywhere? People that actually are interested in working a few days at home and a few days in a co-working place outside. So you need to deal with the issue of hot desks, right? Traditionally, it was very easy to just go there and sit down and occupy space, a space that is shareable. But now, we're in a new world, and again, we don't know how long we're going to be in this situation. But how can you ensure that that place has been disinfected after somebody else used it? So what's going to happen is a lot of people have to adapt to have their own mobile workstations that they can carry from one place to another, set it up, and not share it with anybody else, right? And so what are the responsibilities for the employer, right? So it's clear that just a stipend will not cut it if you actually are getting it. You have to be more proactive. You have to be more hands-on to ensure that your team members are actually getting the training, the guidance to get exactly the type of equipment that they need to stay safe and comfortable long-term. In effect, if you're actually not doing enough, you are shifting costs to your employees, right? If you're reducing costs for real estate or overhead that you had traditionally, and you're asking your team members to pay out of pocket for the equipment, the Wi-Fi, whatever it is that they need to do their job from their home offices, you're shifting that cost. So there's a big debate right now, and we'll just continue to grow as we continue working remotely in longer term. And why is it important for remote employees to provide a better remote employee experience? So two things, right? The first one is, how do you use the workspace to differentiate and engage employees, right? So you used to spend a lot of money in an office space to kind of build it out and use it as a tool to attract and retain talent, but at the same time to build your culture around it. How does that change when you're working from home or working from anywhere? And the second and more important thing is that you as an employer still have a responsibility to your employees. Whether if they get injured while doing work for you, you will take the hit in the form of workers' compensation here in the United States, which is not a small thing. We've dealt with that in another company before, and I know for a fact that this is very, very expensive. So you don't want to find yourself as an employer in this situation where your employees are getting injured and they have to claim workers' compensation, because you will feel the pain of that. The second one is that we live in a pretty litigious country, the U.S., right? We already know firsthand from injury lawyers that are documenting all these injuries, and will be bringing up class action suits. This is good. This is a no-brainer. This will happen sooner rather than later, and so it's important for you as a company to be proactive about this and stay on top of it, as opposed to reactive and wait until something happens, right? But what about the law? What does it say? So right now in the U.S., the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, OSHA, the position has been pretty hands-off. They really don't regulate and don't get into what do you need to provide in terms of the home office or that space in specific, right? And the reason why is because employment laws were constructed around the assumption that people will be working in an office. Well, that has changed, and because of that, the regulatory frameworks that ensure that your team members are safe will change too. And we're starting to see this in countries such as Spain, Portugal, that have recently come up with proposals for law that actually obligate employers to ensure that this in fact is the case, right? So, in the US and elsewhere around the country, expect battles over employer responsibility to their home workers surely are not far away. And as I mentioned earlier, the legal community will be ready to pounce as injuries become documented by medical professionals. So what's the future, right? So beyond what ends up happening, what your decision is, whether you decide to go back to the office, you decide to provide this flexibility to remote employees, you need to ask yourself the following questions, right? What do you want your company to be known for? Is it just a place that people show up to work? Or is it a place where you actually want to build that cohesion? You want to build that culture where people feel that they're being taken care of, right? How are you going to stand out from your competitors that are also looking to recruit top talent globally now, right? There's some companies that we're working with that their main goal is to differentiate themselves from other companies that are recruiting in other countries, and they use this as a way to do so, right? How will you make people feel valued and connected? And more importantly, how will you empower your team to thrive and create a culture that grows, adapts, and evolves just as your company does, right? So a last thought here is, let's not replicate the office. Whatever that future might be, let's use this opportunity to make remote work better than it. Just a quick summary about us, overview. We are GrowWork is the first only one remote workspace management platform, right? We provide a dedicated remote team concierge service that basically ensures that your team members get everything in a frictionless way, from sit-stand desks to chairs to monitors to peripherals, as well as the services that go around it, the ergonomics training, the coaching, any service that you need for your team members to ensure that they're safe and comfortable. In addition to this, for team members that are interested in working from anywhere, we'll also provide access to hyper-local co-working spaces and organized retreats in multiple places in the country, in the US and Mexico. We are a global solution. We're currently operational in the United States, Canada, Mexico. We'll be launching in Colombia next week. Are operational in the UK, and we'll be rolling out in the European Union and Australia in Q1 and Q2 next year. Everything is it's a one-stop company dashboard that you can integrate into whatever platform you're already using internally in a company, and it's priced on a monthly fee per team member. So highly customizable, highly affordable, and so our goal is really just to ensure that you are taking care of your team members, and your team members are happy working for you. Happy to take any questions now.
All right, Mr. Carlos. If you don't mind, can you pull down the presentation?
What was that again?
Can you stop the presentations? There we go. Much better. Okay, cool. So, I think first of all, I'm going to read a couple comments. Here's a really interesting one from Randy Lowe, and then we'll get into some questions. In the U.S., the employer maintains responsibility of employee safety even when working from home. Let's say that again so that everyone hears this. The employer maintains responsibility of employee safety even when working from home. Liability exposure is going to be coming from regulatory agencies as well as lawsuits due to not having ergonomic and safe workspaces, workstations. Grow Work provides solutions environments. First of all, it will blow a lot of people's minds. I know you talked about it, right? But the employer maintains the responsibility of at-home safety. Is that a blanket regulation? I mean, is that comprehensive?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And in some states in the U.S., it's more strict than in others. California is one of them. So for sure. And again, I mean, it was kind of lax or loose in the beginning because it was out of an emergency that everybody had to transition to remote. But as more companies decide to stay remote or provide that flexibility, now you got to start focusing on, okay, how do we do this the right way, right? And so that's what they need to start thinking about. And the other thing too is that, you know, there's there's a guy that we're working with that reached out to us recently, and he was telling us that his employer was asking them to have an ergonomic workstation, but they were not providing any assistance. So, you know, it's one of those things that, like I mentioned earlier, you cannot really force your team members to pay out of pocket, you know, for these things when you are saving so much money already from not having an office space or the overhead that you usually have, right? It's more than the kind of an ethical decision, which is really what it is at this point. It will become regulated pretty soon, pretty fast, and we're starting to see this in other countries, like I mentioned earlier, Spain and Portugal being the main ones.
Yeah, it's an ethical decision now. So one of the things that you said is that I found interesting. That I want to mention from the regulatory standpoint is that, I mean, people have been working this way for decades now, right? And there's been a growing contingent over the last half decade, right? And it is frustrating, I think, from the needs of the employee that there hasn't been regulation until now, basically, and it hasn't even started, right? We're just waiting. We're waiting for it to come. Probably, my guess would be sometime in 2021. Nobody knows, but I mean, significant force. Like, this is obviously something you're super passionate about. Should these regulations have been, you know, put in place years ago?
No, absolutely. Look, at the end of the day, here's what I tell, you know, people, companies that we talk to every day. It goes beyond that, right? Yeah, one thing is, why do you want to wait until somebody asks you, hey, you got to do this, right? You know already that you have responsibility. You're responsible for anybody who's doing work for you full time. But beyond that, you know, how do you want to be known as a company? Do you actually want to be known as somebody who, you know, takes care of your team members and ensures and believes that you know, well-being is important for them? You know, from a strategic and business standpoint, isn't the best of your interest. You want to have a happy workforce. You want to have a happy team that you know, helps you build your business and not really, you know, jumps to another ship the moment that they get a chance because they didn't feel the love, they didn't feel the care that they were looking for, right? And now this will be the norm more than the exception. Before, you were competing with, you know, local companies. There were only quite a few, depending on the city you were living. But now that you're a remote employee, that you have skills, you know, really your market opens up exponentially. And so you, as an employee, you want to make sure that you're working for an organization that is taking care of you, that is seeing your needs, right? So that's the sort of thing that you need to kind of drill down with a leadership of this organization. Is how do you beyond, you know, the fear of, oh, we're going to get a lawsuit, we're going to get you know, a workers' compensation claim, or there's going to be some other change in legislation that's going to force us to do that. You have to take a step back and think about what is the type of organization that you want to have.
And is that one of the metrics that you guys are really selling to and building your business around? Is retention? Is there like a pretty deep connection between employees feeling appreciated in the specific manner of what your organization does and retention?
Absolutely. No, that's a key metric that we we have. At the end of the day, what we are looking to do here is how do we enable these companies to continue to use the workspace as a way to attract and retain talent while covering themselves for all these issues that we mentioned, right? So for sure, it's one of the metrics that we follow.
You know, I have not had a chance to read. I loved Randy's comments, but he works with you guys. Okay, I didn't realize that. 1099 employees, like how does that work, right? Independent contractors, how does that work?
Yeah.
I think also one thing I do want to add to that is the importance of what you're saying is that there is a moral obligation too, which I think should be realized, and I'll hand it over to you on this.
Absolutely. No, it's a great question what you just asked, because we just engaged a company that hires hundreds of contractors for their business. And basically what they were telling us when they initially approached us is, you know, we want to provide this service, this products to our team members, but they're contractors. And when we do that, you know, we'll be perceived as they being, you know, full-time employees. We don't want to do that. So, you know, we really work very well in that situation, and that through us, through a third party, we take care of these guys, and we make sure that they have exactly what they need, right? In addition to that, you know, there's a lot of contractors that, again, they have to expense their home office purchases, whatever it is that they need to do work. And this may be people that just work for a lot of companies, not just one dedicated one. And so we actually created a solution for contractors. We go directly to them, and we give them access to the products, the services that we provide to the enterprise through this dedicated solution, because we detected that this was a big, massive market that was being underserved, and that it had a need, right? Because not a lot of these people actually, folks have the capability to spend $2,000, $3,000 up front to get exactly what they need.
Right. Carlos, just to close things out, Paulo Reyes from your team mentioned this. You guys, you have a raffle for your signature sit stand desk, and we're going to announce that winner coming up in the closing, which starts in, about 22 minutes to be exact. So you guys have your own sit stand desk model. Is that true?
We do. We work directly with manufacturers. We actually to provide customized sit stand desks that capture your branding as well as other products. Again, it's a way for us to help companies differentiate themselves and, you know, create that, extend their brand to their employees' workspace, whatever that might be.
Cool. That winner in about 20 minutes. Carlos, remember that he'll be on the Running Remote podcast coming later this year. Carlos,
appreciate it, Danny.
Thank you, my friend. It was great to see you. A big thanks to Carlos Escutia. Wow. We're winding things down, guys. Can you believe it? It has been really, really quite a day here. So coming up, we'll close the chat with Liam Martin. We'll check in with our other MCs. We'll close the event with Liam Martin. We'll check in on our other MCs coming up in 20 minutes. We will announce the winners, of course, of those raffles. I want everyone to remember that in 1 month, our next private AMA session for the Running Remote Founders community will be held again December 18th. So if you haven't signed up for the community, you can do 50% discount before 20th of November. We are, as we've done all year, it's been an amazing evolution from a once-a-year conference to a year-round business, adding value. Also, just one more quick shout-out before we talk about this again in the closing speech. You know, a huge thanks to our gold sponsor, remoteteam.com. Chatting with Shaheen Boyash as we have on both stages today. Payroll, compliance, everything you need for your international team, head to remoteteam.com. All right, I'm going to take a break, 20 minutes, and we will close things out right here on stage one. We'll see you guys then.